US reports say President Biden has cleared the use of long-range missiles by Ukraine. Massive escalation feared in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia warns of direct confrontation with NATO. Amidst reports of North Korean troops in Kursk, ceasefire ahead or a dangerous escalation? That's our top focus on the show. Russia is reported to have amassed close to 50,000 troops, including those from North Korea, according to Western media reports. And this is to retake the Kursk region. Ukraine is seeking US Army's tactical missile systems with a range of approximately 190 miles, that's close to 300 kilometers, to target the Russian advance to Kursk. Ukraine wants to use Kursk as a bargaining chip to barter territory during what many say will be peace talks after Donald Trump enters the White House. But before that, there is a real threat of a massive escalation. We get you both sides of the story. We get you the Russian perspective and we get you the Ukrainian perspective on India first. I have Yulia Klemenko, a Ukrainian member of parliament, and Tatania Kukreva joining me on the broadcast. Tatania Kukreva is a Russian journalist. We will get you their perspective one after the other. Big story be breaking here on India Today. The Indian Coast Guard ship, it's chased away a Pakistani Maritime Security Agency ship, PNS Nusrat, in the Arabian Sea. Information we are getting says Pakistan Maritime Security Agency ship Nusrat chased for over 2 hours by Indian Coast Guard ship Agrim. India has cautioned Pakistan. India has warned Pakistan not to abduct Indian fishermen from Indian territorial waters. The Pakistani Maritime Security Agency ship was trying to abduct Indian fishermen on board the fishing boat Kal Bhairav. The Coast Guard ship received an SOS from the fishing boat in distress. 7 Indian fishermen were being apprehended by the Pakistani Coast Guard vessel. That's the information that we are getting. Now the Indian Coast Guard, for 2 hours, it chased the Pakistani vessel, finally intercepted it, and the 7 fishermen who were being abducted, they were rescued. The Pakistanis were told, you cannot take away Indian fishermen. Once the Pakistani ship was intercepted, the Indian fishermen were safely transferred on board the Indian Coast Guard vessel Agrim, and they've now been brought back to Okha in Gujarat. I have India Today's Manjeet Singh Negi joining me for more on this. Manjeet, so the information is the Indian Coast Guard, they chased the Pakistani vessel for over 2 hours and rescued 7 of our fishermen. What more can you tell us about this chase, the intercept, and recovering our people? This is huge.
Well, Gaurav, the Indian Coast Guard ship Agrim deployed close to the maritime boundary line with the Pakistan Maritime Security Agencies and the Pakistani ship PMS Nusrat after the chase of around 2 hours. The Coast Guard ship clearly told them that under no condition it would be allowed the Pakistani ship to take away Indian fishermen from fishing boat Kal Bhairav from the Indian water. And after the Indian Coast Guard ship Agrim was after the Pakistani ship about 2 hours and rescued the 7 Indian fishermen. And today around in the afternoon, the Coast Guard patrol vessel received a distress call from the Indian fishing boat, and after that they immediately launched the operation And the call reported from the Indian fishing boat, the Karl Bhairav, and after that the Coast Guard. And this is not the first time Coast Guard ship always and around 24/7 deployed on the Pakistan water with Pakistan. And there are several attempts from the Pakistani maritime agencies to do such kind of things.
Keep tracking that story, Manjeet. I will come back to you for more. This just goes on to show a stronger India is more aggressive in Indian territorial waters and has not permitted Pakistan to abduct our fishermen from Indian territorial waters. We'll be tracking that story very, very closely. But I now want to shift focus to our other top story. It's being seen as part of a US major policy shift on Ukraine. President Joe Biden, barely 2 months before Donald Trump takes oath as the 47th President of the United States of America, has authorized Ukraine to use longer-range missiles to target Russia. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy had presented his victory plan to President Biden, and that victory plan depends extensively on a steady supply of US and NATO weapons, systems and ammunition, not just supply but also replenishment. That supply, the replenishment, could dry out when Donald Trump enters the White House on the 20th of January 2025, because he's keen on a negotiated settlement. Before that, the war is likely to intensify in the days and weeks ahead, with Russia getting close to 50,000 troops, according to Western media reports, close to Kursk in an effort to take back Kursk from Ukrainian control. US President Joe Biden is reported to have authorized Ukraine to use long-range missiles against Russia, signaling a major change in US policy in the region. Ukraine, that has had a limited supply of Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles with a range of approximately 150 miles or 240 kilometers, is now being armed with the US Army tactical missile system with a range of approximately 190 miles or 300 kilometers. Ukraine has been demanding longer-range missiles for close to 2 years and has repeatedly complained of delays.
Today there is a lot of talk in the media about the receiving permission for respective actions, but strikes are not carried out with words. Such things are not announced. Missiles will speak for themselves. They certainly will. Glory to Ukraine.
In September, when Ukrainian President Zelenskyy traveled to the US and met President Biden, he submitted what he called was his victory plan in the war against Russia. The Ukraine victory plan hinges extensively on a steady supply of US and NATO weapons in the battle of attrition, where Ukraine is fighting an uphill battle. Ukraine's neighbor and NATO member Poland welcomed reports of longer-range missiles being given to Kiev.
Z satysfakcją przyjąłem tą decyzję prezydenta Joe Bidena
I welcomed this decision by President Joe Biden and our allies with satisfaction, because I believe Ukraine should have the means to defend itself effectively. This includes pushing back the Russian rear to prevent it from being so close to the front line.
Ukraine too welcomed reports, but with caution. Ukraine's offensive against Russia, including the counter-offensive in Kursk, has been adversely impacted by the restricted and often delayed supplies of weapons, systems and ammunition.
Це не є геймченджер, але як мінімум це є посилення наших.
It's not a game changer, but at the very least it's a boost to our defense capabilities. 100% on that. This does not mean that we will be able to lead an offensive. Because of the offensive, we need other resources, other means. And this is a complex operation that also needs infantry and armored vehicles. It all works together.
Тобто це все діє в комплексі.
Moscow responded with caution to reports of US authorizing use of longer-range weapons, insisting US was adding fuel to fire.
Очевидно, что уходящая
It is obvious that outgoing administration in Washington intends to take steps, and they have been talking about this, to continue adding fuel to the fire and provoking further escalations of tensions around this conflict.
провоцировать дальше нагнетание напряженности вокруг этого конфликта.
Ukraine has made an urgent request for longer-range missiles amidst reports that Russia has put together close to 50,000 troops, including thousands from North Korean forces, to mount a counter-offensive to retake the Kursk region. Ukraine desperately wants to hold on to the Kursk region to have an advantage during negotiations and perhaps barter of territory during peace talks that are expected to take place after Donald Trump enters the White House in January 2025. Bureau Report, India Today. Let me now quickly take you to Kiev in Ukraine. Joining me from Kiev and the parliament is Yulia Klemenko, a member of parliament in Ukraine. And Ms. Klemenko, will President Biden authorizing use of longer-range missiles impact the war in your favor, or at this time, or this point of time, is it too little and too late?
We expected this permission for many months.
Yes.
And we got it thanks to President Biden. So the only purpose we need long range is to target military targets, Russian military targets, military warehouses, storages of weapon, and military logistic routes. So to stop Russia to destroy our civilians cities, killing our civilian people, and destroy our energy infrastructure. So for us, it's not too offensive for offense, but for defense our territories, our homes, and our cities.
Okay, but the longer range missiles that you seek, and especially the American missiles, since you already have some Storm Shadows and Scalps with a rather restricted range, are the longer range missiles with a capacity to hit perhaps 300 kilometers inside Russian territory, are they available, or will they be available in adequate numbers? Ukraine's operations have repeatedly been either stalled or hampered by slow or inadequate replenishments of missiles.
It's not only, the number of long-range missiles in the world is in shortage. Okay. So not only in Ukraine. Sure, we need more. But even with smaller numbers of long-range missiles, we can reach Russian military targets and to destroy their ability and capability to send missiles and to kill Ukrainians.
But Ms. Klemenko, there is an apprehension that, especially in Ukraine, or in sections in Ukraine, that seems to indicate that once Donald Trump enters the White House, 20th of January 2025, the military hardware, the bombs, the missiles, the rockets, those supplies may be an issue. And Ukraine may actually have to end up ceding territory to Russia and sue for peace. Territory that's already in Russian control may just stay with them.
I don't think it will be this way, because Trump and his administration, President Trump and in his administration, already said that they will not leave Ukraine one-to-one with Russia. So maybe it's the policies of President Trump will be different. But I don't believe that they will leave Ukraine and that they will not help to solve problems and stop wars, not only in Ukraine, but in Gaza and many other regions. Unfortunately, we have wars.
Okay.
So I think President Trump will continue and will have his own strong policies.
Okay, but Russia is believed to be amassing, and if you were to believe Western media reports, close to 50,000 troops, including many, by some accounts, close to a brigade or more than 3,000 troops from North Korea. And these are special operations to retake the Kursk region. Is that the biggest challenge for Ukraine now, to retain Kursk so that you have a bargaining chip for negotiations whenever they happen, whether in January or subsequently?
It's a major, start of the usage and involvement of North Korean troops already started. And unfortunately, North Korea entered this war with their soldiers. And we can see it in Kursk. And I think they will deploy also North Koreans, not only in Kursk, but also to closer to the border with Ukraine and even on Ukrainian territory. We expect it. So unfortunately, we have to fight not only Russia, but also North Korea, Iran, and partly China, because China is providing weapons and technologies to all of these countries. That's why we need long-range missiles to push back and to hit these 50,000 troops.
Okay, so you mentioned it's not just North Korea, you're saying it's also Iran, which is providing those Shahid drones. You're talking about China, that you say is providing military technology. So you have Russia, China, North Korea, Iran on one side, and now with reports from Moscow seem to indicate that in case longer range missiles target deep inside Russia, that would mean direct collusion by NATO forces, and that could bring an escalation and more NATO countries could be in the line of Russian fire. Do you see this as a threat of perhaps World War III that looms large? Because Russia says these longer range missiles cannot be used unless there is satellite guidance and information that's provided by NATO countries.
I don't think Russia will target NATO countries. They don't have capability to do it. They cannot even fight properly with Ukraine. Not talking about NATO. But if Ukraine will fail and will not get push back Russia, in few years, Russia will gather more weapons, more troops, more dictatorship help, and will start war against NATO. That's I do believe, but not now.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Klevenko, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. Let me now take our viewers across the border to Russia. Joining me from Moscow is Tatania Kukreva. She's a senior Russian journalist. Tatania Kukreva, how is Kremlin viewing reports of President Biden authorizing Ukraine to use longer range missiles? Is that being seen as a major sign of escalation?
I actually believe that our military has been prepared to shoot them down for some time now, because this threat has been looming for months now, with the US threatening to authorize those hits and then, saying, but no, we're not ready yet. I believe this is quite a desperate move by the outgoing administration. Just 2 months left in the office, they're trying to do everything they possibly can to influence this conflict.
Okay. Okay. So you're looking at it as a desperate escalation by an outgoing administration, referring to Joe Biden. But give me details of what kind of escalation do you foresee? Because there are some analysts who've raised questions about One, the timing of President Biden authorizing the use of longer range weapons. There are others who say this is scorched earth policy, more aimed at internal politics in the United States of America, so that President Trump starts on a sticky wicket.
I think that's very accurate as an assumption. This doesn't. It just looks like he's doing all he possibly can in these remaining weeks. 2 months, but still, we're talking about then the transition of power. So he's trying to influence the situation as much as he can. But it is, should they use it? Because it's one thing, the report in the American media is one thing, if we actually see those rockets fired at targets within Russian territory, just as the Kremlin has already said, this will signify a serious escalation, because this is a massive step up in tensions between, Moscow and the powers that have given this authorization. And it would mean a new kind of stage of US involvement and European involvement, for that matter, in this conflict.
Okay, but in case, so far the Ukrainians have had access to the Scalp missile, they've had access to the Storm Shadow, but their ranges are about 150 odd kilometers, close to perhaps maximum 200 kilometers. If they get the American missiles, tactical missiles with a range of 300 plus kilometers, to target deeper inside Russia, though they say they'll keep it restricted just to the Kursk region, but should they be able to target beyond, not just with drones but with missiles? Is this a violation of President Putin's red lines, and does that mean that there is a real threat this war could escalate beyond Ukraine?
Well, look, I would not like to speculate on what Russia could and could not do. I believe that this comes down to the same situation over and over again. We were here even before the special military operation began, when President Putin was speaking of red lines, and he was speaking about those red lines repeatedly, and then the West was ignoring that completely. So now it's another, I would say, it is a red line, because even if you listen to the narrative that they're putting forward, this report, then we're talking about hitting targets inside Russian territory, but specifically, we're talking about the Kursk region. We're not even talking about the regions that Kiev still thinks of as its own territory. We're speaking about specifically Russian territory. It's a very specific narrative, and I believe that should these rockets be fired, the decision is then lies within the Kremlin and the Kremlin alone. We have a lot of means at our disposal, and I dare say that the response has always been proportionate.
Tatania, since you specifically mentioned the Kursk region, there are reports to suggest that Russia has about 50,000 troops. These are reports in the Western media, including several thousand from North Korea, and very sketchy details that come out from Moscow or from Russia about what are efforts to retake Kursk from Ukrainian control. What can you tell us?
I can tell you that we need to, especially us as media professionals, we need to be careful with reports. There's one thing, and we know this for a fact, that this conflict has been mediaticized to an extreme degree. So we need to be careful with fueling reports, especially the reports coming out of Western media.
Okay. On India Today, we've been reporting this story from both sides. I've reported from Moscow, I've reported from Kiev and from the front lines of this conflict, and we will continue to do so. This battle is only likely to get worse before things get better. But that is all I have for you on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.